All right, everyone. Welcome once again to the Face of the Business. I'm your host, Damon Pistolka, and I am very excited for our guest today because I've got Jen Hamilton here, and we are going to be talking about creating a great culture with business structure. Jen's a fractional COO, great experience. We're going to talk about her background. It's going to be awesome. Thanks for being here today, Jen.
Thanks, Dana, for having me. I'm so thrilled to be here and talk about this with you.
Oh, we got some good stuff. Good stuff coming up for the people that are listening. So if you're listening, make sure to let us know where you're listening from. If you got questions while we're going along, make sure to ask because this is going to be awesome. So, Jen, we always like starting out learning a little more about who we're talking to. So, you've got an awesome background. Let's dig into your background a little bit and how you got into what you're doing today.
Thank you. Well, it's definitely a diverse background, which I think is what perfectly sets you up to be a COO because there really isn't like COO school.
Yeah, that's a good. I'm writing that down.
So for me, I started my career I had 7 years in public accounting as a CPA. I started with PricewaterhouseCoopers, and that's where I first fell in love with data and numbers and financials and processes and all the things that are what most people might think the boring side of running a business. But I really appreciated seeing how all of the pieces come together. And then you could tell by looking at the data and looking at the financials how successful or not successful a business is. The numbers really tell the story. So that got me hooked on that side. And then the part that I also really enjoyed was working with my team. And as I elevated through the ranks of public accounting, I got to supervise and mentor and teach. And so I left public accounting to go into my own space of consulting and coaching around leadership development and the other side of business, which is how do you get, as managers and leaders, how do you get your team to perform, get them to be able to do processes that you can rely on and hold them accountable to their metrics and their expectations, and through kind of both sides of that of the business, the, if you will, the softer side and the data harder side. It's what gave me the strength to move into the fractional COO space, and I have been doing that for about 4 years now. I love that COO seat. I think it's so important, whether I'm in it or I'm supporting and training someone. It really makes the difference in whether a business is going to execute or not on what they are trying to do.
hmm Yeah, that is the COO is really the hub of getting things done.
Yes, yes. I love the visionary and founder space and
Yeah,
how great their ideas are and where they see, we can get to the moon. And then there's a little bit of a gap between how to get to the moon and where we're at right now. And so that's where I love to come in and execute on their brilliance.
yeah, yeah. Because it is really that the visionaries are great at what they do, and when you bring the right CEO in alongside of them, you can see how they work together in tandem to go. This is the great thing that we should be doing. They say, "Oh yeah, let's do it like this," and then it just goes.
Absolutely.
It's so
Absolutely.
much fun. Well, we got Robert dropping in. Say good evening. Thanks, Robert, for being here today. You must be on the farther east than we are because we're on the west coast, and it's still earlier in the afternoon for us. But so we're going through your background. We start talking about the numbers, the backside of the business. What and you said something too. I'll get to well, but what really intrigued you when you started in accounting? You started seeing these actual numbers from actual companies and really seeing them. What really drove your curiosity there?
I think for me, what I sort of mentioned this before. What I love looking at a this sounds so nerdy, but what I love when I'm looking at a financial statement, that's the nerdy part, is the story that the numbers tell, and you can look at the different comparisons of numbers from the last year to this year to the budget. Essentially, you could start to understand how they spend their money, what their different expenses are, What does their balance sheet look like? What you start to see is that you can get the whole picture of the organization just in their numbers. And I think that's what's really powerful about understanding, whether it's on a financial statement or looking at key performance indicators like we've talked about, or metrics, a scorecard, whatever. You can start to get a sense very quickly of if a business is running well or not. And you can understand where they've been spending their time, where they maybe have been making mistakes. When you start to just understand what you're looking at, and to me, what I have always enjoyed is putting puzzle pieces together and getting to the core of the problem and problem solving. So it's kind of like a dashboard on your car. If a check engine light goes off, you want to go then to an expert on an engine to say, can you diagnose it and figure it out? And I like to look at that dashboard and be that mechanic in a business to be able to kind of put the puzzle pieces together and see which components of a business are working or not working. And it always aligns with the financial or the data results. You can see that alignment once you really uncover it. And then when you start to change it, you can also see the results. So it's exciting to kind of start and end with the data. And that is just me really embracing my geeky, nerdy numbers side.
But it's so true, and it will dramatically alter a business if you understand how to mix these together, because so many businesses that we see, and you can go along or tell me this is not, but the business that I see is that we have really good technical people. They know something about what they're doing. They could be a great computer programmer, marketer, HVAC person. They built a really good business around that technical skill. But the lack of, or say and it's not because they're not smart enough to figure this out, because this is not rocket science, right? But really bringing those things together to understand that story that the numbers are telling him is really it is from certain standpoints maybe nerdy, but it's so telling, and it's easy for people to really understand. Anyone, honestly, I believe anyone with the right little bit of discussion can understand these numbers and really dramatically affect the performance of their business.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you said it before. I mean, it is really something when you talk to people like yourself that understand financials and can look at a financial and then walk through a business and see the physical, and you're correlating the numbers to how things are happening. So what are some of the things you've learned over the years in doing this? Are some of the first places you look when you're looking at a financial and looking at the organization itself?
So a lot of people focus on the top line, and business owners will, if you will, kind of brag about their revenue, or the number of customers, that kind of thing. And the top line is extremely important, but I also get very curious at the bottom line.
Yeah.
Where are we at with profitability? And one of the things that I think is very unfortunate is that is not emphasized as much in peer-to-peer circles and CEO roundtables, and just sort of in your networking. You always talk about your sales and your growth related to that, and so you can learn a lot from both. If your sales aren't where they want to be, it's a pipeline issue, and so that's always very interesting. And of course, we need to have a strength in our pipeline. If your profit isn't where you want to be, usually, and then if you look again at their balance sheet, you'll probably see the facts around this, is that its revenue isn't enough to generate what they're making in decisions around expenses and efficiencies and making difficult decisions. And what I mean by that is that you'll often see on the balance sheet a loan or some sort of debt that is boosting their what feels like growth. But if they aren't actually creating it through the business operations themselves, that's where you start to see the operational issues. So not just pipeline, because a lot of people are like, oh, I'll just fix it by building my pipeline. Of course, that can be improved. but are we making the right decisions to keep ourselves profitable? Are we being really clear about how efficiently we're running and productively we're running? Are we engaging our team so that they can perform at their best? That's where it gets really interesting, and the profitability is going to tell you more of that story of how they're getting where they're getting in their growth and how long they're going to last. Because if they've been living off of debt, there isn't really a company. There's just some bad decisions of not really buckling down and deciding that you need to do what's best for the overall organization.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, wow, lots of stuff there. Lots of stuff there. I want to go back to, you're right on the top line revenues, the top line revenues, even when you're talking about, when people like in SaaS companies are talking about valuation of a top line revenue multiple and things like that, or just talking on revenues in general, there's a lot of $20 million business out there that are not making money. And it doesn't, that business is not worth nearly as much as a $2 million business that's making $500,000 a year.
Absolutely.
Unless you want to sell the equipment or something. But so we're talking about today, we're going to talk about creating a great culture with business structure. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a wonderful kind of entry point into this, because we're talking about sales and profit and other things, and how you can actually be, you can have a lot of revenue but just not making any money, right? And that's a short-term life. But in your experience, and you've been doing integration and helping as a fractional COO for a while now, what are some of the benefits when you start to look at creating more of a business structure around, having an area, having people responsible for an area, putting KPIs in place in those areas? Let's talk about that a little bit, because I think it's a point of hesitancy for a lot of people, because they think that maybe KPIs are bad, or we want to be more flexible, so we don't really define roles and responsibilities as tightly as maybe we should. What are some of the things that you see common when you come in before and after in those situations?
I love the before and after. I feel like it's that makeover show.
Yeah, yeah.
That we experience. The befores do look like the desire for flexibility is making the decisions for the business. And so if we back up, when you start a company, you're usually starting the company because you kind of mentioned this a little bit, like that technical expertise. There's something you are extraordinary at that is going to be causing people to pay for it, whether it's development of a product or development of providing a service. There's something that you're good at, and you probably saw a way to do it better than where you had been doing it before, or there's something that pulls you to it. I have yet to meet someone who started a business because they love doing business.
Yeah.
And that is the crux, right? There's, at some point, if you truly want to make it through, you have to shift from a technician to a business person. That's not so easy, and it's not why you got in. A lot of people start their business because they just want to have the freedom and the flexibility to do what they love. Well, most likely they don't love hearing people's complaints, whether it's customers, employees. They don't really love having to make payroll. It's like, ooh, that's what got me into this.
Yeah.
But yet you have to deal with it. You have to be responsible. So if you really truly want to make this thing last and give you the freedom and flexibility that you actually desire, that you started with,
yeah,
that's the tricky part of it for people, that is to embrace the business structure, the stuff that you probably were running from that caused you to want to be your own boss, is actually what's going to create the freedom and flexibility, because you can rely on your team. You can rely on your functions. You can rely on your process. You can look at data and know if everything's working or if there's something you need to tweak. That's where you get real freedom as a business owner. And so that's what happens on the after side, is that you can actually trust your leadership team. You can trust what they're doing. You can trust that your numbers are giving you an accurate picture. You can trust that you just need to look into this a little bit more because it's off of a number from what you expect. And that gives you the freedom to escape. So I would say if you're a business owner listening and you can't get away for 3 weeks on vacation, and what I mean by that is 3 weeks in a row with no internet, no service, nothing. If you can't do that, you don't actually have freedom. You have a job. You created the job for yourself. So choose if you want to truly have freedom by having business structure.
We're just going to let that sink in a bit. We just need to let that sink in a bit. And it's easier said than done, obviously, but that fear of structure, that probably, as you said it so well, that's probably why you got in business, because you didn't like this structure that held you back. But in honesty, you probably are not someone that would want to be in that structure, but there are a lot of people that do like that structure. There are a lot of people that are happy in that structure because they can go to work and understand what they need to do within inside their scope, and are very happy doing that. Mm-hmm. That's where I think our topic today is counterintuitive for a lot of these founders, because they think that the structure will make their culture something where people won't want to work. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, first, I would ask you, if you're listening, what kind of people do you want to have in your team? So this may offend a few people, but when you come to report card day as a kid, if you're an A student, you're super excited to be held accountable, to show off your grades. If you're a B, C, maybe less student, you're not exactly excited to show off your report card. And so if the same thing happens in a business, that do you want those A players, those people who are excited to be held accountable, excited to be given clear expectations, job descriptions, metrics that they have to meet, which sounds maybe not so fun to a B or C student, also a B or C player in the employee world. So choose what you want. If you want kind of fun, flexibility, maybe people will do meet their expectations. Maybe they won't. Maybe they're not like super thrilled about being held accountable, and they'll complain about behind your back, and then they'll kind of create gossip about how awful you are. So that's one way to do it. But actually, to your point, having a team of A players, they are the ones who are going to give you the freedom because they love the clarity of their work. They love being aligned and working with other A players. They love that structure of having meetings where we can get things done, be productive, solve things. They love the fact that they can have direct communication. If something's not working, we can just address it. It's not that you're a horrible person. If you didn't meet your KPIs, we're going to solve it together, not make you feel like you're this terrible, terrible human being. So that's, to me, the culture that's available when you have a structure around it. It's going to attract a certain kind of employee. It's going to retain that employee. And so you got to decide, what kind of culture, what kind of team do you want? Do you want one you can trust and rely on and know that they're going to deliver? Or do you want one that's a little bit more playful and maybe inconsistent and you kind of have to babysit?
That's a good point. And it's funny that you brought up the report card example, because I'd never put those two and two together, because and this is not anywhere, don't quote me scientifically, but if I heard this a long time ago, that a lot of business owners are actually not your A students, they're your C students. And it does make a lot of, not that they're C students in life or anything like that, but just because they are those visionary kind of things, see that opportunity, go out and do that kind of thing. They're usually not someone that is really driven by structure. And that is part of the reason it's counterintuitive for those leaders to think that this is a good thing for their culture, because it's not good for them.
Right.
But now that I think about that and listen to you, as leaders in those businesses, I bet they don't want to hire a bunch of themselves to be in their business as well.
No. That's the key point, is that in order to be, and you make a great point, because a lot of people that truly are big visionaries, the names that we know, the famous names we know, were very clear in saying that I didn't go to college, or wasn't an A student, or that kind of thing. And it's their genius, their outside of the box thinking, their freedom to
Yeah.
create. And that's what we want to harness out of that business owner. But the way to allow them the freedom to do it is that they're not doing all of the things that their people should be doing for them, that they can't trust, because they want the freedom and the flexibility to think out of the box. Out of the box employees are, you want innovation, not resisting accountability. So
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with creativity and innovation, but within again, structure is giving you guardrails. It's not meant to just keep you down.
Yeah.
It's meant to allow for flexibility, freedom, creativity, innovation, in a way that we can all still be working towards the same goals, working in the same kind of values and culture and structure, and not just have willy-nilly ideas, but still be aligned with where we're going within these creative structures. So you don't have to give up creativity and innovation in structure either.
That's a great point, because I think a lot of people would believe that they're mutually exclusive.
And I can understand that, because it feels like it. But if you truly, one part of the structure that is appropriate for a well oiled machine as a business is the space to, in their weekly meetings, communicate new ideas or new challenges and creatively solve together. That's the kind of innovation you want. If you are so busy putting out fires because you don't have the structure, you're not meeting, you're just dealing with the next let's say avoidable disruption,
Yeah.
because you could have prevented that, you're never going to get that space to truly be innovative and creative in a way that you want to be forward thinking, instead of looking in the rear view mirror and being like, man, we should have done that differently. So it's depend on what kind of creativity you want. Do you want to be fixing creativity or creating innovations and being ahead of disruptions that are caused outside of you, like say COVID?
Yeah. Yeah. So when we talk about business structure, KPIs are something that people talk about a lot, and some people use them a lot, some people don't use them. But we were talking before we got on, and you're as your work, you were using KPIs before, you continue to use them and evolve the way you're using them. What are some of the things and benefits you see when people start to embrace simple KPIs for roles, responsibilities, and accountability when we talk about culture?
So a couple things that I would say is just sort of from a high level first. If we look at what are the KPIs that are going to have us as a company grow, avoid risk, be able to be strong and continue to survive, I think every employee at the at least basic level would want that. It's much easier to stay somewhere you want to be and have the company survive. So there's a common desire to have the company
Ah,
continue because your job continues. So if we start at the very high level, it's important to know what are the different measurements and what are the things that will drive a company to be sustainably successful and avoid risks that could basically take the company under. So if we keep that in mind, when we are able to take what are the core KPIs that keep a business running, and you and I were talking about this, is it happens to be the same KPIs that build the value of the company. It's because we're avoiding the risk of the company going under. Those are the same things we want to look at. And so if we're looking at what are those core KPIs, they're things like profitability, things like revenue, things like churn. How are our customers leaving? Churn of your employees, are they engaged? When you look at those things, and then you start to say, all right, employees, I need, based on your role, for you to meet these KPIs, these metrics, and you tie it to the bigger picture, the bigger purpose of the company and their function within the company. Now is there not only the freedom that actually expectations give you, is you know what is going to look like to feel successful, because at the end of the day we're all graded by deciding, do you get to keep this job or not, do you get a promotion or do you not. It's so much more helpful that you know what it is you're being graded on and what is it expected of you and how to do well in your job. But there's this other level, and why I started at this higher piece, there's a level of deep loyalty and connection to the company when you see how relevant what your actions are doing that you're being graded on connects to the bigger picture of how my role allows us to serve our customers more, or how my role gives us the information we need to avoid being disrupted or going under. When you can start to connect each person to the bigger picture, as well as that clarity, it's this combination of engagement, importance, and it starts to meet those basic human needs of feeling a part of something bigger, feeling important, and being recognized for your mastery in what you're doing. There also gives you an opportunity to continue to grow and develop, because if your role is clarified and you're looking for that next role as an employee, you can easily see what is it going to take to get there. And that's, if you talk to anyone in recruiting or around employee engagement today, there's a couple things that keep people excited. And one of the things that people are looking for when they're coming to a company is growth. And so by having that clarity of how does this relate? How can I succeed in this position? What's my next position? How does it look to succeed there? There's this path that they can see for themselves that's more long-term than what we're hearing is a typical tenure now with a company is less than 18 months. If you really want that loyalty, you need to have them clear on what they're doing, how they're going to be successful, where they can grow, how they relate to the overall purpose, mission, and focus of the company. All of those pieces, if they didn't sound like it, they should, are structure based.
Yes. Yes. Well, and you talk about things. You talk about growth, personal growth. You talk and development. It's like I'm here. I can see my next level is there. I can see my next level is there. I can see how I'm moving forward within my position. And like you said, if the structure is there, I can see what the next position looks like and how I get to that. So as you're doing this and talking to people, what are some of the stumbling blocks that you've run into before when people say, oh, we've tried to do that before, it didn't work here?
I probably would believe them first and foremost that they tried it before and it didn't work. What I would also think though is they probably have a different definition of tried than I do.
Okay.
My guess is they may have sort of tried it, and where I think it gets very difficult to put structure in place is that you have to stick with it.
Yeah.
And you have to go beyond like a week or two.
Mm-hmm.
So the bigger problem is that people will, and this is human nature. I don't care if you're in business or whatever. I'll tell you, we'll see it pretty soon here coming up on the new year.
Yep.
You can look at a gym for the same human nature. The first 3 weeks of January are full of people who are trying to lose weight. When you come back in March and you see the people there, those are the ones who tried it until they decided if it's going to work or not. And it's their consistency and sticking with it that gives them the results. It's the same thing in business. When you try something, anything new, you've got to go beyond at least 3 months and you've got to be consistent with it. You got to stick with it. And so my question to you, if you say you tried this before, I would ask you to be truthful with yourself. Were you willing to be held accountable to actually get it to the point where it became a habit. Because if it's still a habit and it's not working, then come and you tell me I'm wrong. But if you get to have these good business structures in place to the point where they're a habit and everyone just sort of relies on them, they become the new normal. Let's see what your results are compared to what they were before. And my guess is you will be shocked.
We definitely need to leave that soak in for a second. I agree 100%. And I think Adriana here, she said, first of all, she said great advice. And then she's talking about, yeah, when they try to put roles and responsibility in, and they're missed or half done. And you hit the nail exactly on the head here, Jen, because it is like anything else. If you're going to do something for the long term, you've got to do it long enough to start seeing results from it and turn it into a habit that people are going to do and rely upon. And I think even and that's where it's so, I believe it's so important that you have to have someone within your organization or someone outside your organization coming in and helping you to keep that diligence, because it's not usually the founder / visionary that's going to be the one that can do that kind of diligence, that just keep that thing going. It's someone else that has to be willing to go every Friday. We have this meeting, whether we feel like it or not. And we have to do these things in this meeting every time. And you make a great point about that, because it has to be long enough, as you said, to develop some results and establish the habits. It's so cool.
Thank you.
So now the fun part of this is when you talk about before and after. Now we're sitting here today. You walked into a company and we want to change. We're tired of this way. We're tired of this way. What are some of the things that you find after, when they've gone through this process, when they've gone and taken the time and put the effort in and got to the other side of this? What are some of the things that they're saying at that point, or some of the things that you really see about the company?
One of my favorite things is, and again, goes back to how much I appreciate and respect the power that culture plays on a company, is there is something magical that happens. And I've got plenty of clients who are just in the beginning, so they haven't seen it yet, but they're starting to see it, is that when you have a team in place that you can trust, it is a game changer. And they don't believe me.
Yeah.
They don't believe me because they haven't seen it. And I've seen it time and time again. What we do, especially as a fractional COO, is that we start to show them it's possible to have a team that you can trust, that deliver, that you can start to back off from micromanaging. You may say, I'm not a micromanager. But if you aren't believing them that they'll get it done and you have to keep checking and asking, you don't have a team you can trust. So you don't have to wait till the end of your time with a fractional COO or a business coach or any of that to see it. It starts to happen the first person that you have in place who actually you can trust. And if you have a great person on any of the people in your leadership positions, you'll start to see the magic. And then you're going to get hooked. And then you're going to say, can I have more, please? So to me, that's the biggest change. And it's part of why we always start with looking at, do we have the right people in the leadership positions? Because they will make all the difference in the world. And I go back to when I was, I can't even remember, so many trainings that I learned about Henry Ford. And he was put on the stand to say that he was a fraud, right? Because he didn't even know how a car worked and the mechanics. And he finally said, why do I need to know the engineering if I have a button that I can ask for the head of engineering? Or why do I need to know my finances if I have a button and I can call the person that head of finances? And that's what everyone should want. You can stay that creative, flexible, C student and have your time to play, as long as you can call the right people that you can trust and know they're going to have the answers and they got your back.
Another mic drop moment right there. Because you said a couple things, and we didn't talk about this earlier, and getting the right people on your team. I mean, that it is one of the hardest things in the beginning that I think you really, as a founder of a business, need to realize sometimes you're going to have people that were great when you started, but they are just like you. And that's probably what's not right for that role.
Yeah.
They might be right in another role, but they might not be. They might not be right in your business any longer, which is it's hard. And but getting the right people, as you said, no matter what, getting the right people is really in those spots is the first step.
Well, and to your point, Damon, I think what is harder is that it is the admittance of I have to get the wrong people out of the seats that I put in there. And that I think is because if they got a good person, they'd be like, sure. But it's getting the wrong people out that is the harder part. And to your point, there may be a different role, there may be a different company. And time again, if you've ever let someone go who just is not the right person for your company, or you check in with them later and you gave them the freedom to go get something they love, their life is happier for it. So as difficult it is, because we're humans,
Yes.
I see more often than not it works better for that person you're letting go. Now I'm going to add to this that makes it even harder. A lot of times when you're starting a business, you start with like, oh, I hate this, friends and family.
Yeah.
So when you have to let go the wrong person and you have this outside relationship, it's really hard for them to do. So one solution is hire me or someone like
Yeah.
me to make you do it. Business coach,
Yeah.
COO, whatever. Like, well, they made me do it. I always like to be the scapegoat
Yeah.
for my clients, but when the day is done, they will feel better. You will feel better that you release them from this ball and chain that you gave them of responsibilities that you and they both know they are not capable of doing or enjoy doing. They will thank you more later, not right away,
Not right away. Yeah, it's not going
but
to be good
later.
that time. Yeah. You hit so many good points there, because when somebody's in a place, even though it's a familiar place and it's not right from because businesses change as they grow. And let's face it, most of your clients, most of the people that are looking for a fractional COO are their businesses growing and evolving, and they really need to understand how to help the people, the systems, the roles and responsibilities. And sometimes that need changes and the person can't change with it.
I like to say, or the saying that I heard from some of the trainings and business coaching that I've received over the years so that I can be my best is what got you here isn't going to get you there.
Yeah.
And that's the processes, that's the people, that's the data, it's all of it.
Mm-hmm. Ah. So I'm gonna cover one thing that I wasn't planning on, but we're talking about great culture. We're talking about how the business structure adds to that. What do you think about how do millennials and Gen Zers react when you're working with them and having this structure?
So it's interesting because obviously there's more and more talk these days about different generations than we
Yeah,
probably have before. But what I like to do is I like to look at human nature. So one of the greatest books that I think for being a leader is Drive by Daniel Pink. And what it gets at is the motivation of humans. It's not generationally based, it's human nature based. And I think if you focus on that, it works for Gen Z, millennials, Gen X, boomers, all of it. And ultimately, what you will find in any generation is that if we get back to the basics, like I was talking about before for those A players, what they want, and again, we're looking at how do I get A players in my culture. What they want is to feel that mastery, that they are able to do something well. So they will love having metrics and scorecards and, getting their trophies and getting their A's, whether
Yeah. Yeah.
whether they were millennial and trophy generation, everyone gets a trophy, but this time they earn the trophy. It feels better when you earn the trophy. The other thing that they are looking for is a sense of belonging. So if you have a culture that shows what your role is really important, like we talked about with the structure before, that you are working well as a team, everyone is getting their voices heard, we're problem solving together. Now you feel like you're part of a team. That meets that sense of belonging. And then if you have the ability to really truly acknowledge and appreciate each other, having the group accountability allows people to say, hey, we're doing a great job. Thank you for what you're doing. And even if it's not quite hitting it, the fact that you're being heard to how to improve it, that sense of recognition for your efforts, including what's not working, that appeals to everyone. Now, going to the millennials and Gen Z, we're just hearing them louder about those human nature elements than baby boomers and Gen X. It's because we were growing up in a world where it wasn't that you were heard as an employee. You just kind of did your job, you got paid,
Mhm.
and you did. So now that we have raised children and some people grandchildren who are basically, let's own it, baby boomers and Gen X caused them to have a voice, caused them to want things a certain way. We empowered them to, take a stand. You can make a difference. All of these things, because we didn't feel that way. That's part of why they are
Yeah.
more loud about their needs. So we need to own the fact that we created this culture, but at the same time, they really just want to have their work matter. They want to be with good people. They want to know they're doing a good job. But every employee actually wants that.
Yes. Yes. That's awesome. That's awesome. Wow. Jen, this has been awesome. I mean, we're about out of time already, but man, I could go for a long time. So we're gonna have to schedule another time to talk about some more stuff. And you got other exciting things going on too that we have to have more conversations about. But I just want to thank you so much for being here today and talking about this and explaining how creating a great culture can happen by adding business structure.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate you letting me share my passion and my geek side of structure and numbers and all of the things. But what really I'm super passionate about is that people in loving their life, whether you're an employee or the business owner, and this structure just makes that more possible. And so to me, that's what's really fun is people feeling good about their work, loving what they're doing, happy customers, happy clients. It's just really fun when it all comes together.
Yeah, it is. It is, and you explain it well. So if well, I want you've got something I want to make mention too of Catapult. You've started to work with the Catapult system and do those kind of things. We don't have much time to explain it, but can you give us a 30-second synopsis or minute synopsis of that too? So I want because if people want to reach out to you, I want them to understand a bit of that too.
Sure. So I was recently became aware of Catapult as a operating system and process, as well as a technology to make my job as the COO or any leadership within a company faster, better, easier. And so what had me embrace this is that it just made me a more focused, better operator, if you will, because it gave me the idea of what is it that is needed to build valuation of a company, whether you're going to sell or not.
Hmm.
Even if you just want to keep owning it, you want the value to continue to increase. But it also helps me focus on what risks to avoid. And so it gave me, again, those guardrails, the structure that's going to work in a modern world, utilizing the right KPIs that I'm driving the execution towards. And so it's this beautiful combination of structure and focus as well as engaging the team. All these pieces that we said come together in this way of operating a business called Catapult, and they make it much better and faster by having software that goes with it. So it's been this nice tool that makes me feel smarter, gets my team to know what they're doing better and smarter by having it really, really clear on what are those expectations and how do we meet to have productive meetings. All the things we talked about today, it just allows me to do that with more precision and in this modern world.
Awesome. Awesome. We're going to have you come back and talk about that, Jen.
Sounds good.
Well, I want to thank you for being here. If people want to reach out to you, Jen, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Sure. Easiest is Jen with one N at HamiltonCOOS.com. So Jen at HamiltonCOOs.com.
Very good. Very good. I stuck our names back up on display there so they can see your name and do that. Well, I want to thank you again, Jen. I want to thank everyone else for the comments, for Adrian and Robert today and dropping the comments in there. Thanks so much. Thanks for everyone that's listening and didn't comment. We'd love to have you out there. Remember, now this is going to be live on LinkedIn. You can go back, or since it's live on LinkedIn, you go back and listen to the replay if you want to. You can also see it on the Exit Your Way YouTube channel. And in a few weeks, you'll see it out on our podcast. Thanks, everyone, for being here. And Jen, thank you so much.
Thank you, Damon, for having me here. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, we're going to end it for now.